All right. So in this episode, Alan and I broadcasting from unknown places. We'll get into that and what we're doing. We have some new music, and for topics, firstly, we go through AI and ChatGPT's new model, how it could be used in work, and then lastly, time allocation for systems versus the work you're doing day to day. So let's get into it.
We want to rebuild.
Rebuild it?
It'll take me a month to rebuild it.
Rebuild.
That's how you rebuild, comrade.
This is the Rebuild Procurement Podcast. I am Tom Finn. I bring 15 years client-side procurement, finance, category management experience in large and small cap orgs.
And I'm Alan Veek. I'm a procurement geek on the client service side of our street in procurement. And I've assembled a team of superhuman procurement professionals doing managed services in the procurement arena. It's called Summit.
And we are in different places. So usually, I don't know if my background would be considered better normally. This might actually be considered better. But you're in a different spot too, Alan. Where are you at this week? What are you doing?
I'm in the we'll call it the foothills of the Rockies. I'm in just outside of Denver in a little town called Silverthorne, and I'm visiting some partners in Denver and kind of doing a little bit of work out here for the week. And boy, I'll tell you what, it's beautiful. The aspens are turning colors. I was driving up into the hills yesterday, and you've got the evergreens, and then you have these little streaks of like fluorescent yellow aspens. And I was thinking to myself, those are Summit's colors, green and gold. But this is also the home.
Are you going to relocate because of that now?
Well, I might have to. I mean, geez, it's. But I want to. It's fun to tell the story. This is as I wheeled into Summit County. I'm in Summit County, Colorado. That is the reason for the name Summit Procurement. Was my daughter dislocated her shoulder, and she had some surgery up here, and I still get the bills from Summit Orthopedics. And I saw that when I was trying to think about branding for my new company. I was like, Summit, yes, that's it. And so Summit Procurement was born.
Oh, how interesting. It's also interesting how those bills never stop coming for like, I still think sometimes my kid's like 8 years old. And sometimes I feel like I still get bills from when he was born. But that's interesting because whenever I thought of Summit Procurement, I can see why it clicked, just sort of the peak at the top. It's always interesting to hear those stories when those names click. Yeah. I'm here in Vegas, of all places. So it's like the opposite. It's still 100 degrees during the day. I landed in, whenever I land somewhere, I always want to like get things just to eat if I'm like hungry or drink. So I walked across the Walgreens, which is literally across the street, and I broke a sweat. It's very hot still here in Vegas. But
because of the way Vegas is laid out, right? You had to walk 17 blocks to get across the street.
Yeah, I had to wait a very long time. So we're on
7 escalators.
Yeah. It is. Everything starts at like floor 3 too. But yeah. So just here for an internal meeting. So with a decent sized group. So it's cool to see people in this. Whether you're going back to the office or not, it's always good to see the folks that you wouldn't see anyway. So that's one of these weeks for me.
Yep. It's great. It's good. It's good to get out of the office. Good to get out of the house. Good to hang out with people. I think it's also worth us mentioning we've got some new bumper music. We got a new theme song.
Yeah. It is a good. It'd be cool to have a real intro.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be good to have something that's rocking. Yeah, that's not generic. So this was not made by AI. This was generated by a human. I'll give a shout out to my friend Alex Detherow. He lives in my town. Used to live in my town. He now lives in Columbus, Ohio. He's a DJ. He's a professional DJ, and he's done some work with us to make that music available. So we got an intro, we got an outro. Should be some hot stuff this week.
Yeah, and that's for sure appreciated. Yeah, just for anyone listening here, we tried going down the AI. I always try these different things. Maybe this will be a transition point too. But it could do very cool things, but it doesn't end up landing exactly where you want it to. It kind of is interesting in how things get generated. There's a It's just one of the sites. There's probably a million of them. Was Udio, like audio, just without the A, Udio.com, and it creates things, but it's just so. I mean, it's kind of like scattered with what you receive back. Even if you try and kind of push it to do something similar, and ends up being different. You're like
Tough.
But
Yep.
it's kind of one of those, like, it's like a party trick still for a lot of those things. But, and I was looking there, I saw this tweet. I actually saw people quoting it, so I couldn't find the actual tweet. But Sam Altman, who maybe just hop into the what we're chatting about, I think today we have a bit teed up the this AI conversation, which is something I think you and I just generally, I'm kind of obsessed with. I think you are really interested in it as well. But just Sam Altman, they did some things with ChatGPT, and then on the back end, which I can actually see AI supporting, is just how would you phrase this piece, Alan? You had brought this one up.
Yeah, well, I would say I was talking earlier with somebody else about how it feels like, and I think this is official. Here are two official things. Did you know it's official? The Turing test has been passed.
Yeah,
Like
I
large
I
language
it was
models.
passed by me. I mean, probably like a year and a half ago, and people kind of,
See,
I think everyone
yeah,
got a little scared, and no one talked about it.
yes,
But I was
no one talked about it.
reading a book about AI 3 years ago, and that was still the gold
Out there.
standard, and
Yes.
not anymore.
Nope. Solved. Cracked. Yep. Like
Mhm.
Fermat's theorem or something. So Turing test isn't passed. The other thing, I think it's official, is that Moore's law has officially broken. So something that was around for 50 or 60 years that basically said, as we build new microchips, chips for our computers, the amount of compute doubles every 18 months and the cost halves every 18 months. So that was like this eternally upward curve of productivity improvement in our chipsets. And I think we've officially fallen off of that in like the last 3 to 5 years. It's just not working anymore. But this, where I'm going with this is, it feels like the new Moore's law applies to AI or large language models, maybe more specifically, that says, it's going to be something like every 12 or 18 months, we get twice the results for half the cost. And I think that's what ChatGPT announced this week with their O1 mini and O1 offering. It's like everything gets better.
Yeah, it's reasoning. Just on the Moore's law piece, is that with the whole NVIDIA run up? Is that the idea? Like, is it now more expensive, or?
I think that's different. I think NVIDIA is on their own curve. So they probably, that's like, that the specific chip they're building is the GPU.
Mm-hmm.
But NVIDIA is not just a simple chip company, because they build chips into hardware, and it's the hardware they sell. So it's like a more complicated thing to say.
Yeah, to say it's like a box.
Itself.
Like, never think of it like as a little chip. It's a box you're getting.
Yeah. So they build a system. They don't just build a chip, but the chips inside the GPUs were on that Moore's law curve for a long time. And I think everything, probably even those GPUs, have fallen off Moore's law because they just can't make things smaller.
Okay. So now they can no longer get smaller.
Physics. Yeah. Limits of fundamental physics. So, but we
now
pushed Moore's law
ends.
It now ends. I think it's over. But now we're pushing it over to the large language model side of things, where I think we're gonna live through, I don't know, is it decades? Is it years? Is it decades? I don't know, of continuous improvement on the large language model front, where it's just gonna keep generating fantastic results.
Yeah. Have you played around with the what is it? O1? What's the new one?
O1.
Or for ChatGPT?
I've not done it yet. No.
So the thing that is different with this one is it's this O1 preview. So it's kind of, if you're paying the $20 a month, you can use it. And when you ask questions, it reasons out the next basically 5 questions you would ask. And then it answers based upon that reasoning. So it's interesting that it actually breaks it out. It shows you what it's doing for this one. Like, you ask the question, and then it lists out the 5 things that it's working through, and then it gives you a more intelligent answer. So I haven't come up necessarily with ones that require more reasoning. I probably need to hop on Twitter and Reddit and see what those what folks are doing with that now. But yeah, it's that's kind of the next level, is bringing in the reasoning, which is doing kind of on its own by just being more forward looking. The model being more forward looking.
Which is, that's a fascinating topic, because what is what is our ability as humans to reason? It's like to cast to the future. I think that's what we do that the rest in the animal kingdom don't do. They have a brain, but they don't generally cast and think about the future. And so that sounds like what they're trying to do with O1 here is to do a bit more of that, which gets, obviously, it increases the cognitive performance of all these models, which is, yeah, I love it. I love
Yeah,
hearing
I
about
love it too. Yeah, so Sam Altman, I'm just catching articles here on it, but he's saying we could have super intelligence in a few thousand days. So call it 3 years is what he's saying.
Yeah, that's impressive. A
Yeah.
few
So
thousand, but a few thousand years. That might be more.
no, days, a few thousand
Oh, days. Sorry,
days.
few
So figure
thousand
365
days.
in a
3,
year, that's
4,
2.5
5.
years.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
Yeah.
that's that's fascinating. And they said, what did they say about this O1 model? It is specific to the STEM arena. So science, technology, engineering, math, I think is where it's kind of been built purposefully for that particular set of knowledge.
Yeah. So on the and I think Brandon, we can put this in the notes too. So there's a community on Reddit. It's called Singularity, which is kind of where this all goes, kind of focused on that super intelligence piece. And there's different, like from an accuracy standpoint, on ChatGPT 4.0 in competition math. So people they test these things. It went from a 13 and now it's much more accurate. They would expect it to hit 83% accuracy. So the preview alone is at 56, and yeah, it'll get to 83% accuracy. And then on similarly, I'm not sure on code itself. So yeah, GPT 4.0 is at 11, and this O1 they expect it to be at 89%. And then the last one they had here, it was on PhD level science questions. So GPT 4.0 was is at 56, and then they expect it to be about 78% accuracy. Which, I mean, you think of a PhD student, I mean, we all have come up in certain when your teacher kind of like rounds up for the class, no one's rounding up for ChatGPT, right? It's yes, no. So if they're hitting 80%, they're getting B's.
Yep, that's
pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty solid, right? Yeah, it's pretty solid. That's better than some of the doctors, some of the PhD folks you deal with. They pass, but from an accuracy standpoint, there's a lot of opportunity there.
Well, it'll be fun to dig in and use it. I thanks for describing kind of that user interface, Tom, because now I'll go in and try and think of some things I can ask it myself, because that's really quite cool.
Yeah, everyone's also been saying, I've heard Perplexity, which is an alternative to ChatGPT, that is always more accurate. I'm curious how this differs, but at the end of the day, what does this mean for people? You really have to figure out how you add value, and then also the relationships you build, because you can't expect. I mean, if it passed the Turing test, what the Turing test says is, do I think what I'm talking to is a computer or not? Can I tell the difference between human and computer? So if the answer is no for that, if someone could just chat interface, all right. I mean, there's a lot of the relationships that you build, and then what you do with these tools, with these AI tools that are potentially smarter than you. So how do you kind of move that around and be the one that controls that? So I think that's going to be a big shift in mindset for folks.
It's going to be a big shift. There, sometimes on this pod we talk about. Have you seen this? Has somebody invented this yet? So you kind of mentioned Perplexity. I tried out Perplexity. I've tried out Claude, the Claude guys. And then obviously Microsoft's got their Copilot, which has ChatGPT behind it. But Google has their own Gemini. So has somebody made the aggregate site that basically allows you to ask a question and it pings all 4 or 5 or 6 systems? Because then you got like Meta's got Llama or whatever. Like everybody's got a system, right? So like, can you ask a single question and it gets parsed out to all of those individual services, and then it brings it back together and says which one was the best answer? Wouldn't that be cool?
It'd be super cool. Yeah, and there's probably a lot of back-end stuff. I don't know if they're all if you could tie into all of them, but yeah, that would be very interesting to see. Yeah,
because at various times I've used different ones. I think I'm currently subscribed to Gemini because I'm kind of a Google guy at the core.
Mm-hmm.
But we use Microsoft inside Summit, and so I've got a Copilot. I got ability to use Copilot, and for a while I did subscribe to ChatGPT and Perplexity, but I don't subscribe there anymore. But it would be cool to, like, when you test them all out, they all give wildly different answers to simple questions. So there's got to be an aggregate that is better than it's like the wisdom of teams across all the AIs.
That's something I would love to subscribe to all of them. My wife would kill me. She's on a hackathon when it comes to subscriptions right now. So
yes,
I'm holding firm to my ChatGPT. I think if I move, I might lose that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but there's I also just like to mess around with those models. They are pretty cool. Just to Gemini, I mean, both you and I were All In fans, and they had the All In Summit. Sergey's back. He's working like 60, 80 hours a week. So I'd expect something interesting is going to continue to come out of Google when the founders start showing back up and saying, I want to play ball. Let's get to this. You can get the whole entire billion-dollar, trillion-dollar company around just that one idea and their push. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, that's cool. Speaking of the All In Summit, I don't know if you've watched all the videos. I've probably watched about half of the ones that have been released. I heartily recommend them to everyone. Did you see the one from the co-CEO of Waymo, the Google self-driving car?
I did not.
CEO. Yeah, it was quite impressive. It was one of the shorter ones. It's about 30 minutes. But I'm not going to quite get this right. But did you know that Waymo has completely self-driving cars out in the field that are delivering hundreds of thousands of rides per week?
I've ridden in them.
Have you? So I've never ridden in one. This is going on, and I'm like, what? That's a lot of self-driving car rides. It's like,
it wasn't all me. I was about 2 or 3 of those rides.
Tell us about your experience.
I mean, it's just interesting, but also comfortable. They're like Jaguars. So didn't even know. Yeah, I was surprised. That was just something that surprised me.
What city did you ride in?
San Francisco. Both times it was San Francisco. So actually, it was a friend of mine when I was out there for work. He had an access code from another friend. So it was early days of Waymo just getting the ability to drive around the city. And there were very distinct places where the Waymo itself can stop. So you have to it was kind of out of the way to get it. I mean, we had to cross the street, and we had to, go down 2 blocks because we wanted to have this self-driving experience. And but it's very good. That first time it kind of got stuck a little bit trying to make a left-hand turn, but I did it again probably 2 months ago, and it felt much better. It felt like it
no
progressed.
Human in the car? No human
Zero
driver
human in the car. Just us. Just 2 of us sitting in the back seat, and then in the front seat, it's just a steering wheel that's turning itself.
Wild.
Yeah, it's very wild.
Very
but
cool.
Have you driven in a Tesla, or have you driven a Tesla when it does full self-driving?
I've not. No.
So
you sound like a Luddite over here.
No, I mean, but with that, I have, and it's not great still. But that was also 3-6 months ago, where you're supposed to keep your hand on the wheel, but it will veer off. You put it in Google Maps, so it goes where you want in Google Maps. But it's a little more shoddy at the time. Yeah. I'd expect though, having been in Waymo, like Tesla will be there in no problem. I'd expect they're going to do just fine.
I did see a tweet, a post on X to that effect, which basically said, okay, the competition's over. It's now down to Waymo, and Waymo uses LiDAR as their method, LiDAR and video to kind of navigate. And it said it's down to Waymo and Tesla. It's between those two, and Tesla uses just video, no LiDAR. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, that LiDAR thing is something Elon Musk made the decision a while ago. Whenever it gets if it's raining pretty hard, or say if it's really foggy, because it's just that video, it says be careful, just drive instead. So to the extent that Teslas will roll into a city and it'll just be that, like Waymo's doing in San Francisco and probably Austin, maybe they're in Pittsburgh too. But I'd be hesitant to say that's totally doable, just based upon experience driving the car when it is raining hard, and says, don't try and use full self-driving. Just, keep your hands on the wheel and drive like you always have.
Yep, that's right.
So.
We'll have Brandon put a link in the show notes to the videos from the All In Summit. They're all up on YouTube and freely available, so they're awesome. They're all
geopolitics.
Great.
It was a very good one. Very informative, like opened my mind. And there's a few on there that have opened my mind. I mean, they always have. Yep. They always have very good conversations. So things we will strive to do, Alan, and the conversations we'll strive to have.
That's what we're all about here on the Rebuild podcast. I'll switch gears now
to improving.
Yeah, that's
other ways of improving.
Yes, other ways of improving. Last week I was doing some work with a colleague of mine, and I came up with this interesting philosophical question, and it kind of hit me for the first time. So I've been building the company Summit Procurement since July of last year. So we're about 14 months old. But even as I cast back across the rest of my life, this has real relevance inside procurement. I started to wonder, how much time do I spend doing actual work versus how much time do I spend building systems to get work done? And if you think about that, so let's take the stupid instance that this revolved around. I think it was like invoicing clients. And there's a way that you got to build an invoice and send it out. And how do you collect the information to put in that invoice? And then how do you send it out? So I was writing down process steps for here, do this first, do this next, automating a few things. And the whole notion being, if I just did the work and didn't build a system to do it, it would take me incrementally longer every time to do it. But if I build a system behind this, I can become more productive and efficient and drive the amount of time I spend on this one particular task, invoicing. I can make it better and more efficient every single time I do it. And so I wondered, what is the pie chart of my work? What does the pie chart of my work look like? How much time do I spend actually building systems versus doing the real work itself that is inside the system? Does that make sense?
Of course. What was your conclusion?
I am concluding that I am probably greater than 50% of my time building systems. I would guess it's 50 to 70% of the time building systems versus doing actual work.
Yeah. I think it's also a stage of your organization too that leads to that, right?
Yep. But I was trying to divine whether there's a best practice in there. Is it so let's say that you're building a new procurement team. I see this all the time. I see posts on LinkedIn saying we need a new, director of procurement. It's the first director of procurement that we're hiring for our business. So if you're that first director of procurement, you're the VP of procurement, you're the chief procurement officer, and you're showing up and it's relatively greenfield. There's not a lot of people process technologies in-house. I wonder, as you're thinking about my first 30, 60, 90 days, we talked about that previously, as you're thinking about my first year, my first 3 years, my first 5 years, how much time should you spend building systems versus doing the actual work? And there's probably a best practice in there that I'm guessing, just based on my own experience, building systems should easily be half of what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to a lot of for bigger orgs, especially, is how much time you're spending on things. So how much time are you doing in something that could be repeatable instead of doing it? So how can you build something out that can just kind of do it for you? Whether that's Excel, like an Excel template that kind of fills it in and, auto-populates something. And from a best practice, if it's something repetitive each week, even if you're spending an hour, and if you're spending an hour each week doing something, and you could build out a system, say that system takes you 8 hours, takes the entire day, or 2 hours a day for the whole week. That 8 hours, you're going to recoup that in 8 weeks. So the ROI is quite quick. Now, if it's something that, it's like a pain in the butt, is seriously 1 minute, 1 click, that 1 minute, 1 click is probably just better just to click.
Yes.
And maybe you're you're annoyed. It gets rid of something annoying, but you don't want to spend 2 weeks fixing that.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, it's interesting. There's an intersecting thought, a colliding thought in my mind that came with that, which is, Dave Allen's classic productivity book, Getting Things Done, talked about if you can do a task in 2 minutes, don't put it on your to-do list, just do it. Just do it right now, and then don't even add it to a to-do list. So it's kind of the same idea.
I saw, there was a video I watched yesterday And it was just exactly that. It's like 2% of people in the world will just say, do it right now. Like, just just do it right now. And that'll get you ahead for a lot of things. But that system, you could also move that to the side and say, I should just put a system in place. When I was in finance, especially, it was always, you have close week one. It's very just repetitive things, right? And I think in a lot of procurement, a lot of sourcing organizations, is more, things can be a little more forward looking. So sometimes you don't, like, it might take 3 months to close out a contract or a deal. So you don't necessarily think of what is repetitive. But in finance, it was always very clear. You close week one, week two, you're putting together slides. Week three, you're improving stuff. Week four, you're preparing for week one. So it was always like, you could focus on it. So there was a lot of focus in that week three on the system side of things. There is so much to be improved in many organizations for how you buy things and how you work together. And leaning back on the AI, you probably shouldn't do it all yourself. That's one thing that shines for, like, just say ChatGPT, when you're typing in stuff to it, is building out templates for you.
Yeah.
That is the best. And improving processes, Alan. If you were to take what you wrote out and said, can you improve this? Like, I can only really do this in Excel and Word, but still just make it better. And you'll get the feedback for that. That is one thing where it shines, and it's shined for the past year. Templates.
Yeah, that's good to know. I don't do enough of that in ChatGPT, so that's a good.
If you're going to do anything, just do that. Templates.
Okay. Very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, so that's kind of that's a top of mind topic for me these days. Is, do I have the right mix? What is best practice? I feel like sometimes. So I had a very good dear friend of mine who basically rephrased the "don't let perfect be the enemy of the good" phrase. He said, I can overscope anything to a point where I can kill it, And so
yeah, for sure.
As I'm thinking about building out a system, I'm like, I get these, grand images in my head. Oh, I'm going to make it better and better and better. And then I realized 2 weeks have passed and I haven't done the work. And the person's like, where is my stuff? And I'm like, oh, don't worry. I'm building the best system in the world to make this. I can overscope it so it just dies.
Yeah. And at one point we should just go through the different layers, because it does matter in an organization, because it does matter sort of where you are and what you're supporting for how much you should focus on the systems versus just getting things done. Because if you're starting something, or if you're in a leadership position, there's more of you need to be challenging your folks and making sure they improve with, you can offer those insights, you can offer the different ways to build it out and lay out those expectations. And if you're managing large areas of spend, there may be different ways to improve just the things you do. But things that everyone could do, you can always just, like, the auto sort for emails and then Gmail and Outlook. There is just a lot of just making your day better. That does take a little setup work.
It does. Yeah, there's always a bit of setup. And yeah, I've got a few guys on my team who I really respect, because I think of them like, they get things done really fast. But sometimes it's a little too fast, right? They haven't built out enough of a system or figured out how to make it a little bit better. They just, they just get the work done. But so there is a balance there. There's a best practice.
Yeah, but to that point, it's not all about getting things done quickly. There's a level of quality that is also associated with your role that should be taken into account as well. So it's not just the hours and the the 0.01 seconds. It's
well said.
How much better is this? It doesn't always, if you have the extra time, don't just twiddle your thumbs. Make the damn thing look good too.
Yeah. Use the time. That's a little bit of option value. If you've got the time, use the time. Don't just rush something out so you can check it off your to-do list. Give it some thought. Make it better.
That's where people can excel. I think in a lot of cases, Alan, that is probably underdone, and it ticks me off sometimes. If I'm being completely frank, it's just, like, I appreciate that you did that, but this is for a lot of people that are just reporting through anybody. It's like, but how could you have gone a little further and made it better and made it more excellent?
Yep.
Because you probably could have.
Yeah.
So the turnaround is not always, the turnaround time hitting that mark isn't. That's kind of primary thing number one if you're under a time crunch. But if you're not, how can you deliver an exceptional product, whatever that may be? So spend the time on the slides, make it look good, make you look good. Those things matter.
I like that. Good conversation. Thanks for helping me think through all that. That's
I love systems.
Ongoing. Oh, I love systems. I'm a systems guy at my core.
So I love talking about that stuff. But all right, well, it's a little. I think what we had like 2-3 topics here, Alan. But I think we kind of hit those marks. I don't know if we'll ever have a conversation over the next, call it 1 year, that doesn't involve AI. But I think that's a good thing because things are moving so fast. I think so many ways we can improve stuff with it.
It's appropriate. We're on Moore's law for AI, so it's always going to be getting better. We gotta keep up with it. Try and keep up with it. So good point. All right, you're going to go out and hit that hot Las Vegas.
No, I'm just saying.
Sun.
You know how Vegas is, Alan. Alan is just stay indoors. I don't have to leave. Everything's
Spend
here.
Your money.
Yeah, everything's here. I also don't like betting. I'm like the worst person to be in Las Vegas. The only reason I left the room is to get my coffee. So and then I came right back up.
You and I share that in common, Tom. I'm allergic to gambling. I walk down on the betting floor and I'm like,
yeah,
I gotta get
I'm
out
allergic
of here.
to knowing I'm gonna
Tightens
lose.
up. It's right.
Yeah,
the house always wins.
Yeah, I was I stand behind. It's a decent number of people here, and they were playing craps. I was like, "What is it when you put it on the line again?" I think it's called the line, right? That goes around. Like I was walking through it, trying to remember. I was like, "What's the odds on that?" He's like, "Yeah, it's like 48, 49%." So it's just kind of you lose money slowly. It's just for that. It's like exactly. I want 80% winning. I want my odds high. I'm not even good at 50.5. Like I don't like that either. I want to win, like real wins.
Good. All right. Well, stick with business. Stick with business out there. Hope you have a good meeting. Hope you have a great week. We'll be back at this next week.
Sounds good. Different backgrounds next week.
All right.
Bye. Later, Alan. Bye.
We want to rebuild.
Rebuild it.
It'll take me a month to rebuild it.
Rebuild.
That's how you rebuild, comrade. Show me, and you won't hear the word rebuild.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebuild Procurement podcast. Check in weekly for new episodes and subscribe for alerts.